The franchise record winning start to the season is done. The Bucks have lost a game of basketball. They go down to the Hawks in a game that was pretty painful to watch in the second half. We're going to break it all down on this podcast. The offensive struggles, the turnovers, Giannis and his performance in this game, and what happened to the shooting after a pretty enjoyable first quarter. We haven't had much practice with post-game podcasts after a loss. Let's see if we've still got it.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday, and also find my work over at ESPN alongside me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. And as always, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen or first watch of every day, whether it's the audio platform or on YouTube. We really appreciate it. We hope you'll subscribe. We hope you'll comment on YouTube. Give us your thoughts after this loss. How are you handling the first loss of the season? And today's episode is brought to you by Sweatblock. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try Sweatblock. Save 20% with promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. Bit more on that later. Frank, the Bucks have lost. I hope no one blames us. We did mention 82-0, and perhaps there's some people out there that were thinking 82-0 was possible, but we suspected it wasn't going to be the case. This game started off okay, hitting a bunch of threes, 8 threes in the first quarter, but really after that point, it became a grind, it became a slog, the turnovers took over, and this actually became pretty ugly.
Yeah, I mean, you're given a boost right out of the gate when you hear Trae Young isn't playing due to his shin injury. And then, of course, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, does this mean this is a trap game now? You know? As you said, I mean, they go out 21-8, they hit a bunch of threes, leading by double digits late in the first quarter. I think they had 8 threes before the Hawks hit 1. But always be wary of, you know, these early road, especially around the road, always be wary of these early leads where it's, you know, because you're just hitting a bunch of threes and the other team can't buy a three because, you know, again, it's the whole mean regression thing. Can you actually maintain that over the course of a game, or are things going to even out by the end of it? And that's exactly what happened in this game. Hawks ended up shooting slightly better from three. I think, what were they, 11-29, I think, or something like that. So, I mean, they didn't set the world on fire from three or anything like that, but Bucks just could not buy 3 in that third quarter. And it just felt like in the third quarter, friend of the pod, Ryan, aka Archon14 on Twitter, was messaging with him, and he just said Bucks had big third game in 4 nights energy. And Giannis had 2 days off. He didn't have any excuse, but he kind of had the same thing, it felt like, going against Antetokounmpo. And, you know, just looking at the box score, it's not like the Hawks like lit it up or anything like that, right? I mean, the teams had basically were even in terms of foul and free throw attempts, but the Hawks took 12 more shots. They made 10 more. And if you want to know why they had 12 more shots, it's because they had 6 fewer turnovers and 6 more offensive rebounds. That's your accounting, basically. Gave them a bunch of extra opportunities, which is ironic, of course, because the Bucks used sort of like a similar math to beat them in the playoffs 2 years ago, using their size, getting out in transition, getting on the offensive glass, creating second opportunities. We talked about that over the, you know, here yesterday about those second opportunities and how they've been able to use those to their advantage this season. But today, the advantage on the glass was Atlanta's, and nothing more emblematic than Okongwu jumping over Giannis basically twice in the second half for putbacks. That kind of felt like the summation of the night. Giannis just sort of looking a bit lackadaisical in the second half, never really kind of got on track. And again, Atlanta has the bodies to kind of make him have to work, and, you know, pretty, by his standards, inefficient, 9 of 20 for 25 points. And, you know, again, I was looking at the numbers, you know, he's shooting more at the rim than he has really in years. It's almost half of his shots coming into this game were coming at the rim. He was at 40% last year, but his mid-range and basically everything outside of the paint has been down this year. He's shooting 33% from floater range, from 10 to 16, and from 16 to three-point range. He was at 42%, 42%, 43% from those areas last season. So again, the jump shot is not there right now. The three-point shot, he only took 1 today. Atlanta was generally kind of up on him, so they weren't really daring him to shoot those, but he missed that as well. So the Giannis kind of jump shot, not there right now. And obviously, we've talked about Okongwu and to a lesser extent Capella, but certainly Capella as well can make Giannis's life kind of hard around the basket. But again, I think really the story of this game, though, was, last game for the Bucks, all those role players making shots. Didn't need Giannis to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. Tonight, you saw a bit of the reverse of that. The bench for the Hawks was awesome. AJ Griffin, the rookie, hit a bunch of shots. Okongwu, obviously, had some kind of energy plays, 10 points on, I think, 10 shots. So it's not like he was, some beacon of efficiency or something. But between him, Justin Holiday hit some shots, especially basically some kill shots in the fourth quarter when they ended up hitting some threes. So yeah, I mean, I expected to see more of these types of games where the Bucks, kind of things don't really go their way. And, again, just sort of veteran team just kind of says, all right, yeah, okay, mail it in, move on to the next one. In this case, it took us 9 games until you had one of those. So that's not so bad, but now you've got 2 more games on the road this week. Thankfully, you get a day off between each of them. But, if you lose one more game this week, you're going to feel pretty down about this road trip. And again, win 1 out of 3, you're still going to be 10-2. That's a good place to be. We all would have happily taken that coming into the season, but you could think you can be a bit greedy. You've got the Thunder and Spurs coming up the rest of this week. The Thunder obviously are frisky. The Spurs have been very frisky and can't really be taken for granted. So you're gonna have to go out and play. Those teams are not going to roll over for you, but obviously losing this game to start the road trip, especially against an Atlanta team without Trae Young, definitely an opportunity lost. But 82 games, it's going to happen sometimes.
Yeah, I did mention on yesterday's podcast that there has been times, and a couple of times in Atlanta where the Bucks have struggled a little bit and lost a few games. No Bogdanovic as well, who hasn't been playing, but he's another decent player. If we're going to talk about the guys that weren't playing for the Bucks, you should acknowledge that. Trae Young, the sunglasses, I don't really understand. I'll never understand it. But hey, he was rolling with that look.
I think, did they say something about like he has like an eye injury and maybe that's why he was wearing sunglasses? Because I would certainly say I am wholeheartedly in the camp of like people wearing sunglasses indoors should just be mocked. So I don't know if I want to give Trae Young the benefit of the doubt because he obviously was trying to look cool with the sunglasses he was wearing. But yeah, I don't know. There may have been technically maybe a medical reason. I don't know if he got hit in the eye or something a few games back, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I'm defending Trae Young tonight, but I want to at least make that note because I think Lisa Byington said it on the Bucks broadcast.
Well, eye injuries are no joke. So it's a very good point that you make there. I just had the Hawks broadcast on again because I was delayed to start this game, and I just cannot figure out how to skip through the game on my League Pass on my Apple TV this year. Something's changed, and you're just stuck with whatever broadcast you're stuck with until you get to live, and then I'll go back to the Bucks broadcast. But anyway,
you don't get that. You don't have the little thing to do streams, the different streams.
Yeah, but it doesn't it only lets you skip on whatever it starts on, which for some reason it's normally the road. Anyway, it's just I don't know. International League Pass, great service, but I'm having some real issues. So I had to listen to the Hawks to start with. Vince Carter's pretty cool, obviously. But anyway, the Hawks
did they get rid of Dominique?
No, they're running a 3-man weave.
Oh, I never liked Dominique. I just thought he was sort of like arrogant, like an arrogant homer. I know other people like Dominique, but I always thought he was kind of annoying. But anyway, I'm sure Vince is pretty good.
Well, the announcer said that Drew Holiday had never lost a game against his brothers. Maybe it was they were in the same lineup. Unbelievable stuff. So tough night for him. He's lost bragging rights for at least tonight. But it was also a tough day for me today because we recorded a podcast for the NBL over here at the ESPN offices in Melbourne. And I had to walk home. It's stinking hot today, and I was sweating like an absolute maniac. And I was thinking about sweat block because I was thinking, people might be looking at me, and they might be saying, this guy is a sweaty mess right now. And he could use some sweat block, which is a sponsor of Locked On Bucks. So that's what we really appreciate it. But basically, what you do with sweat block is you chuck it on, and it wipes away.
Is that part of the ad copy? Chuck it on.
You chuck it on. This is an Australian version. And these sweat block wipes, I got to tell you, they're your little secret to confidence because I was lacking confidence walking home as a sweaty mess. But sweat block wipes work up to 7 days. It's hard to believe. You apply them on a Sunday, and he'll be staying dry all week long. And we're entering summer over here. But I will say also in Wisconsin, because I sweat it a lot in Milwaukee, because the problem with winter in Milwaukee is that you're freezing cold all the time. But then anytime you go inside, it's boiling hot. So I'm telling you, sweat block, it can be used 12 months of the year. So if you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, try Sweat Block. Save 20% off with the promo code Locked On at sweatblock.com. It's also available on Amazon there.
Hey, question. I meant to ask you this yesterday because you were in New Zealand.
Go for it.
So you've obviously spent enough time in Wisconsin. You've been to Canada following the Bucks when you were here. I think you're probably generally aware of how Americans sort of perceive Canada. Is New Zealand like the Canada of Australia? Like kind of like the kind of little brother, unoffensive, but you still have rivalries and sports and stuff. I mean, I know there's like obviously sports rivalries between the New Zealanders and the Australians, but what's the dynamic like? Is there bad blood? Are they kind of like, oh, you can't hate the Kiwis? What's the sort of Aussie New Zealand kind of dynamic like?
Well, Stephen Adams once described it to me, so I'll take the words from the great philosopher Stephen Adams. So he was playing for Oklahoma City at the time. I was obviously still living in Milwaukee, and I came into the locker room. I started talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, you're an Australian, bro." And I said, "Yeah, mate." And then we went back and forth, and I said, "Can I talk to you after the game?" And he said, "Yeah, of course." And then one of the reporters said that we shouldn't be talking to each other because we should have some rivalry. And he said, No. He said, if we're both in America, this man's my brother. He's like, but if I run into him in New Zealand, I'll think he's a dickhead. And, and I think that that's appropriate. I was even, taking the piss out of the Kiwis to their face in New Zealand. Risky business, but you got to do it. It's a healthy rivalry, but lovely people overall, I will say. Very nice people. So perhaps in that regard, there's a bit of similarity with Canada. They're supposed to be nice people, aren't they? But the Kiwis, yeah, very lovely people, very polite. They were very accommodating. All in all, it was a great trip. And shout out to Stephen Adams, I think one of the more entertaining interviews in the entire NBA. So
definitely, I would put him at or near the top of my, NBA players that you'd want to spend, an afternoon with, just kind of hanging out. And I've never been to Australia or New Zealand, but basically my entire perception of New Zealand is framed by my enjoyment of the HBO show Flight of the Conchords. And there's some funny. Have you seen it? Are you familiar with the show? I enjoyed. Eventually they get into some of the Australian embassy versus the New Zealand embassy, the consulates, and some of the kind of big brother, little brother stuff there. At one point, Brett McKenzie dates an Australian girl, and she's like really rough around the edges, and he's kind of nice and actually, no, is it Brett? No, I think it's actually Jermaine dates an Australian. But anyway, great show, super rewatchable show. If you ever need a random comedy, Flight of the Conchords on HBO, highly recommended. All right. Well, I just didn't want to talk about that basketball game, so that's why I was happy to kind of divert us from that conversation.
Well, back to the basketball though. You referenced a few. You referenced a few of the numbers, and one that stands out to me: points off turnovers, 22-5. So when things got really ragged in the third quarter, it got really, really ragged. And we discussed the offense yesterday, and depending on what site you're looking at, they might be just in the top half of the league. They might be just.
I think they're back down below. They're going to be back down below in the second. That's why I had to call it out yesterday, because I had to enjoy that moment when the Bucks offense has crept back into the top half, because I think now they're going to be bounced back into the bottom half.
Yeah, and this has been, a theme, and we've spoken about the different guys that have stepped up. But you already referenced it. Even if I look at the box score tonight, you mentioned Giannis not. At his peak efficiency, but that's fine. He still got 25 points. Holiday was 7 for 14 shooting. Lopez was 3 for 7 from 3. So even if you just look at the 3-pointers, Allen, Holiday, and Lopez, as I do quick math here, 8 for 20. It wasn't a horrific shooting night, but it was the fact that they couldn't control the ball. And we rarely see this with the Bucks. You mentioned the one rebound with Okongwu, who I think we've given credit before. He does a pretty good job defending Giannis, but this was the first time this season, because they've won games on the back of their defense. This was definitely the first time this season where it looked like the other team was just playing harder than the Bucks, which is not something we've seen a lot. But do you look at anything in this game? Again, acknowledging that Chris Middleton's not there, but he's just one man. He's just one human being. Is there any bigger concerns about the offense of this team moving forward? Again, keep in mind that they're 9-1, but we look at this team, can they win the title?
I mean, I think we saw enough in that Celtics series, and we even saw stretches in the previous year when the Bucks won a championship. I mean, they still had like that Brooklyn series, right? Just think to some of the kind of frustrations that they had in the half-court offense, even with, their big three healthy. So I don't think that they're above, reproach, that they're above having stretches where they can be frustrating. I think you look at the guys they have. Obviously, on the one hand, you have Giannis, who's nobody manufactures rim points as well as he does. Perhaps for a change, he's actually too dependent on rim attempts this year, with his jumper really not having found a rhythm yet. But Drew's rim stuff is generally down, and Chris, his rim shots were down last year pretty significantly. His free throws actually went up. But I think there's maybe a little bit something there just in terms of offensive generation. Drew and Chris, both obviously guys that are kind of finesse guys that are, going to have to beat you with jump shots. And, when the offense they bring in Joe Ingles is to kind of help patch over some of the half court, lack of creation, shooting, passing, etc. So we'll see. The fact that they're not, great without Chris Middleton seems very reasonable. If you can be average without Chris Middleton surviving your defense, and then, hopefully become more of an elite offensive team when Chris comes back, and who knows, obviously, hopefully Joe can come back and be part of the answer there as well, then I think that's probably all fine and good. But, certainly you just think about some of the guys that they're having to play a lot of minutes. I mean, Javon Carter, not a creator scorer. George Hill, not a creator scorer. Grayson, very good shooter, but not a creator per se. And obviously Wes Matthews, who, as we said in yesterday's show, they haven't had to rely on Wes for a ton of minutes, which I think is a plus, sort of saving him a little bit. He's obviously much more at home playing with the big three, because then his lack of kind of ball handling and creation doesn't really matter a whole lot. But yeah, so I think there's something. They're definitely not a juggernaut offensively, at least in terms of consistent half-court offense. And I think tonight, actually, I was surprised the cleaning the glass transition numbers actually were pretty ugly for both teams. But the Bucks, I think, were in the first percentile for transition tonight. Like literally got nothing going in transition. Part of that because the Hawks weren't turning it over, but they also just weren't able to get out and run at all on the Hawks. And obviously, that's part of what you look for with any Giannis team is, get out in transition and try to hurt the other team that way, but it just did not happen tonight. And again, whether that was lack of energy, lack of focus, just the other team playing well and getting back on defense, probably a combination of those things.
Well, I probably wouldn't have bet at the start of the season the Bucks would be 9-0 though. And if you've listened to the podcast and you listened to the over and unders at the start of the season, you would be well aware of that. But you would also know that I took the over on the win total, which was 53. So I was banking on this team to win 54 games this season. But the over and under for win total is one thing that you can read there. And also you can read at betonline.net as I click the right sponsor read there. Betonline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. You can get win totals. You can get individual games. You can get futures on the NBA championship, conference championships, MVP awards, defensive player of the year, sixth man of the year. I'm still keeping the campaign for Bobby Portis. He had 11 points and 10 rebounds tonight, so he's still rolling. But go to betonline.net for all sports. Because you can find all the information, the stats, the news. It's all there at betonline.net. We're always, we are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix, but they are, I should say. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. I'd say what else was weird tonight was the fact that the Bucks are actually playing on the road. So I guess, is it their third road game? Seems
I believe
accurate.
so. Yeah, I don't like it. Seems unfair having to play away from your own fans. I'm pro not playing road games for the record.
No, I don't think so. Yes, I think it would be best if they did. What else you got from this game? Fair income. This was a pretty difficult one to watch, and there's not too many takeaways. Let's be honest about this. What do you got? Give us some random general thoughts. We've already gone to New Zealand TV shows in segment 2 of this podcast.
We're already at 24 minutes, man. What normally you're trying to get me to shut up and move on and wrap up a podcast. Now you're trying to egg me on and try to get more stuff from me. I don't know. It's a loss. It is what it is. I think you just put your head down, try to get a good night's rest, and go to Oklahoma City, take care of business on Wednesday, and then go into San Antonio and do what you're supposed to do in San Antonio as well. I feel like they've had some underwhelming performances in San Antonio over the years. So I don't know. I've never gone to see the Bucks play in San Antonio, even though it's like only 2 hours from me. I just like, nah, I don't really feel like it. I don't think I'm going to do it this year too.
Geez, big fan.
Yeah, just whatever. I still, by the way, you want to know? Can you guess what the last Bucks game is I went to?
Yeah, Game 6 of the NBA Finals, baby.
I mean, talk about a letdown. It doesn't matter what game I go to next; it's going to be a huge letdown compared to that. But yeah, I was home last year, and we had tickets to the Rockets game, and then Giannis wasn't playing, and I don't know, there was stuff going on at home, and I just skipped it. And then we didn't have tickets to the Christmas Day game against Boston, so I didn't go to that game either, and then I wasn't home at all. So yeah, not a fan, just not a good fan over here. Not really interested in the Milwaukee Bucks a whole lot. So unless something changes, I'm gonna skip Friday as well. I'll just watch the game on TV. But yeah, Mama told me there'd be days like this. I think Marcus quoted that.
Marcus was on fire at the back end of this game. Let's be honest. Yeah. He was hilarious. All right. Well, it's clear what's going on here. The Bucks are playing very close to Frank Madden towards the back end of this week. He's just bought a new house. Obviously, he doesn't want to buy tickets. So let's start.
I gotta write a big closing cost check next week. I can't be freelancing paying for basketball games, right? Actually, my daughter has asked me though. She recently did ask me that she wants to go. She asked me if she could go see Giannis and the Bucks play. So I think her first NBA game will hopefully happen. I got to look at the calendar over Christmas when we're going to be home in Wisconsin. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how excited she's going to be to sit through 2.5 hours of basketball. But we'll probably have to, buy her a lot of garbage food and cotton candy and stuff like that to kind of keep her engaged. But so it goes. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully they win and she doesn't have to deal with a grumpy dad on the way back from a game. But I don't know. I don't think we're going to go next Friday. I don't think I'm going to drag her all the way down to San Antonio.
Hey, let's wrap this up with some news. I'm sure no one's listening by this point, but Drew Holiday did tweak his ankle in this one as well. So hopefully he's okay. Moving forward for the next couple of games. He tried to play it out. He tried tighten the old shoelace trick up, which LeBron, I think, is made famous over the years, but he ended up going to the bench there. We'll see how he pulls up for this game against the Thunder. All right, let's wrap it up. The Bucks lose. Post-game podcasts aren't as fun.
Mamu scored his first points of the season.
Yeah, he did a dunk. Yep. So shout out to Mamu. All right.
I've seen a couple random comments about trying to get Mamu minutes, and I'm just like, I like Mamu, but what's the point? Is anybody looking at the Bucks rotation thinking this rotation needs more Mamu? I don't know. I feel like there's going to be another lot of Wisconsin. Well, I feel like there's going to be a fair bit of Wisconsin herd in his season again this year. But shout out to Mamu. Who knows? Maybe he'll get a chance at some point.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's the key to unlocking the offense, but I like him. He's great content. I think he's improved. I'm excited to see what he does this season wherever he plays. All right, let's wrap it up. We're going to do a podcast again tomorrow, so make sure you check us out. As I said, subscribe on audio, subscribe on YouTube, jump in the comments. Tell me where your panic meter is based on the Bucks' first loss of the season. They're 9-1. They're doing okay, people. There's no need to panic just yet. Check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast as well for all the rest of your sporting news. At least they're not the Packers. All right, Frank. Speak to you tomorrow.
Good tagline. Good tagline.